Penguin Audio presents Future Perfect, The Case for Progress in a Networked Age by Stephen Johnson. Read by Samuel Cohen. For Clay, Rowan, and Dean. Introduction. Progress, actually. Commercial airplane crashes are one of the few events guaranteed a place on the front page of every national newspaper. Somewhat less common on the front page, however, is a story about a commercial airplane crash that didn't happen. But every now and then, one of these non-events manages to cross the threshold into newsworthiness. One such unlikely story appeared on page 1 of the January 12, 2009 edition of USA Today. "Airlines go 2 years with no fatalities," the headline proclaimed. An analysis by the paper had discovered that the U.S. commercial aviation industry had achieved a milestone unprecedented in the history of modern air travel. Despite the dramatic increase in flights compared with earlier decades, not a single person had perished in a commercial air accident during the years 2007 and 2008. A 2-year stretch with 0 fatalities was, statistically speaking, a remarkable feat. Only 4 times since 1958 had the industry managed to make it through 1 year without a fatal accident. But the safety record was part of a long-term trend. In the post-9/11 period, chances of dying on a commercial flight were 19 in 1 billion, an almost 100% improvement over the already excellent odds of flying in the 1990s. According to MIT professor Arnold Barnett, this meant that an American child was more likely to be elected President of the United States in his or her lifetime than to die in a commercial jet flight. The story caught my eye in part because I had long maintained that news organizations presented a misleading slant on current events. Not the conventional slant of the left-right political world, but the more subtle bias of being more interested in bad news. If it bleeds, it leads might be a good strategy for selling papers, but it necessarily skews our collective sense of how well we are doing as a society. We hear about every threat or catastrophe, but the stories of genuine progress get relegated to the back pages, if they run at all. But this USA Today article was bucking that trend of negative bias. And so, inspired by its refreshing story of progress, I decided to write a little essay about it for a website at which I happened to be a guest contributor that week. I summarized the article's findings and made the point that we might have fewer people suffering from fear of flying, and thus spending less time on much more dangerous highways, if the media did a better job of reminding us of these genuinely extraordinary achievements. A more superstitious person might have worried that saying such things in public was tempting fate. In fact, when I had talked about airline safety with friends in the past, I'd often been accused of just that, a criticism that I would inevitably laugh off. Surely fate had better things to do than worry about my monologues. But within a few hours of publishing my little riff about airline safety, while I was sitting in a television studio waiting to do a book promotion, my phone began buzzing with emails and text messages from friends who had seen my piece. A U.S. Airways jet had crash-landed in the icy Hudson. "Look what you did," my friend said. "I had tempted fate, and fate had slapped me back across the face." By the time I actually managed to get to a television set to see the live report, it was clear that the plane had in fact survived the landing with minimal structural damage. And a significant number of survivors were clearly visible standing on the wings, waiting for the ferries and police boats that would rescue them. I penned a quick, sheepish entry promising to keep mum about air safety for a while and mothball that piece I was working on about the planet's amazing streak of avoiding species-extinguishing asteroid collisions. Then a funny and wonderful thing happened. The world quickly learned that all 155 passengers and crew aboard Flight 1549 had survived, with almost no serious injuries. Flight 1549 went from being a devastating rebuke to my optimism about commercial aviation to being a ringing endorsement of it. If you believed in that sort of thing, you might have said that I had tempted fate.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?